Shalom, Shalom, Kol Haloyim, Yahweh, Ba'ashem, Yahushai, Ba'ashem Rachakudash, Shanyakabad, Gadwala Rekwab, the Kwanyam Nawa, Wa, Shalayakim Nawa, and that's the belongers to our apostles and elders of Great Millstone, Shalom, Wabarakim, Labakaryim, Shaliyah Sharala, and that's peace and blessings to the elect of Israel. I was praying that the Lord gives me some inspiration for a video, doing some scrolling through my Apple News feed, and I came across this article. It was written today, June 27, 2022. The title says, West Seeing Biblical Explosions of Mormon Crickets and Grasshoppers. And this is very much relevant because the Bible says that Babylon the Great, America, another name for it is Egypt. And of course, we understand that one of the plagues of Egypt was the Lord sent right here in the book of Exodus. The 10th chapter, he brought locusts upon them. And yes, I'm jumping the gun, but I wanted to state the relevancy of this article before we read it. So we're going to read the article. We'll grab that precept in the book of Exodus, and we'll show you how this is also, America is also the New Egypt, so similar plagues are going to be happening to this place. And this is going to lead or help lead into the famine that the Bible talks about that will be happening in these end days. So I'll read a little bit of this article and we'll jump into it. It says, driving down a windy canyon road in northern Oregon rangeland, Jordan Maley and April Amat are on the lookout for Mormon crickets, giant insects that can ravage crops. There's one right there, and it says, they're not hard to spot. The insects, which can grow larger than 2 inches, blot the asphalt. Mormon crickets are not new to Oregon, native to western North America. Their name dates back to the 1800s when they ruined the fields of Mormon settlers in Utah. But amid drought and warming temperatures, conditions favored by the insects, outbreaks across the West have worsened. So over there in the West, they've been dealing with a drought for the longest, and I've made a few videos on it. But because of the drought, these are kind of temperatures that favor these crickets, so they're popping up everywhere. The Oregon legislature, last year allocated $5 million to assess the problem and set up a Mormon cricket and grasshopper suppression program. An additional $1.2 million for the program was approved earlier this month. So a total of $6.2 million has been allocated towards what they call a grasshopper suppression program to get these crickets. That's how devastating they can be to crops and farmland. It says it's part of a larger effort by state and federal authorities in the U.S. West to deal with an explosion of grasshoppers and Mormon crickets that has hit from Montana to Nevada. But some environmental groups oppose the programs, which rely on the aerial spraying of pesticides across large swaths of land. So the program is basically getting these pesticides, chemicals, and spraying it across the land in order to kill the grasshoppers, the crickets. But obviously people are opposed to it because you're spraying the crops as well. You're spraying the earth, the farmland as well, which means that the the food that comes forth is going to be it's going to be have chemicals on it, for lack of a better word, as well. It's going to be done. It goes on to say Maley, an Oregon State University Extension agent, and Amat, a resident of the small Columbia River town of Arlington, are both involved in Mormon cricket outreach and surveying efforts in the area. In 2017, Arlington saw its largest Mormon cricket outbreak since the 1940s. The roads were greasy with the squashed entrails of the huge insects, that's crazy, which damaged nearby wheat crops. On the highways, Once you get them killed, then the rest of them come, he explained. Mormon crickets are cannibalistic and will feast on each other, dead or alive, if not satiated with protein. The insects, which are not true crickets, but shieldback katydids, are flightless, but they can travel at least a quarter of a mile in a day, according to Maley. So these crickets can travel at least a quarter of a mile. I'm going to keep reading because I want to get down to a certain point. Amit fought the 2017 outbreak with what she had on hand, blah, blah, blah. Jumping down. Another infestation last year had local officials scrambling, Maley said. We had all those high-value crops and irrigation circles, he explained. We just had to do what we could to keep them from getting into that. In 2021 alone, Oregon agriculture officials estimated 10 million acres of rangeland in 18 counties were damaged by grasshoppers and Mormon crickets. Now, if something of that magnitude happens again this year in 2022, during the time where in the West they're experiencing a drought, we have this C-19 that's still lingering on, and now we're seeing shelves in different stores being empty. The supply chain is still being messed up. You have truckers that have been striking, been quitting their jobs. Gas prices still going up, suppressing a little bit, but nonetheless still high, especially diesel prices. So now truckers aren't able to bring their loads to one place, from one place to another. If something like this happens again, 10 million acres of rangeland in 18 counties destroyed by these grasshoppers, it's going to catapult this upcoming famine that, according to the Bible, we know is coming. Let me see. I think maybe 2 more paragraphs is what I want to read. Yep, 2 more paragraphs. It says, under the New Oregon Initiative, private landowners like farmers and ranchers can request the Oregon Department of Agriculture, ODA, to survey the land. If ODA finds more than 3, just 3, or 4 technically, if ODA finds more than 3 Mormon crickets or 8 grasshoppers per square yard, it will recommend chemical treatment. After just more than 3 Mormon crickets, that's it, chemical treatment. So the food is going to be defiled. That's the word I was thinking of earlier. In some areas near Arlington, surveyed in May, soon after the hatch, there were 201 Mormon crickets per square yard. So you know that they're already spraying even more chemicals on the land to get rid of these crickets. State officials recommend the aerial application of diflunisirone. The insecticide works by inhibiting development, preventing nymphs from growing into adults. Landowners can be reimbursed for up to 75% of the cost. So these Mormon crickets and grasshoppers, they've explained it as the West seeing biblical explosions. And this is going to catapult into this upcoming famine that we already know is going to happen, that we already know we're in the beginning stages of. And of course, I've already said it, but the reason why they're calling this biblical proportion is because this is one of the plagues that the Most High placed upon ancient Egypt. We read this in the book of Exodus chapter 10, starting at verse 1. And the Lord said unto Moses, Go in unto Pharaoh, for I have hardened his heart and the heart of his servants, that I might show these my signs before him, and that they mayest tell in the ears of thy son and of thy son's son what things I have wrought in Egypt, and my signs which I have done among them, that ye may know how that I am the Lord. And Moses and Aaron came in unto Pharaoh and said unto him, Thus saith the Lord Yahweh power of the Hebrews, How long wilt thou refuse to humble thyself before me? Let my people go, that they may serve me. Else, if thou refuse to let my people go, behold, tomorrow will I bring the locusts into thy coasts, and they shall cover the face of the earth, that one cannot be able to see the earth. And they shall eat the residue of that which is escaped, which remaineth unto you from the hail, and shall eat every tree which groweth for you out of the field. So it calls a famine. And they shall fill thy houses, and the houses of all thy servants, and the houses of all the Egyptians. Just think about that happening right now. The Lord sending so many grasshoppers and locusts that it's not just destroying the crop, creating a famine, but they're just infesting your house. Just in your house, upstairs, downstairs, in the basement. You can't even get a good night's sleep because they're just crawling around. And especially a lot of women out there just fearing these small insects, not even going to be able to stay in their houses. But this plague happened in ancient Egypt. We're going to see something similar, maybe not the same exact thing, but something similar happening in these end days, and we'll show you that. Reading verse 6 again, it says, And they shall fill thy houses, and the houses of all thy servants, and the houses of all the Egyptians, which neither thy fathers nor thy fathers' fathers have seen, since the day that they were upon the earth unto this day. Damn. And he turned himself and went out from Pharaoh. So this was a plague, basically, that the Most High wrought upon ancient Egypt, as you keep reading. Now, excuse me, voice is a little hoarse. Anyway, when you come to the book of 2nd Ezra, the 15th chapter, then this is in the Apocrypha, obviously, and this chapter is going into an end-time prophecy. When we jump down to verse 10, it says, Behold, my people is led as a flock to the slaughter. I will not suffer them now to dwell in the land of Egypt. So we have to ask ourselves, what Egypt is this talking about? Is this ancient Egypt? Because physically, that's all we know, right? But Ezra's lived during the time of the Medes and the Persians. Those empires reigned after ancient Egypt. So now we have to ask ourselves, or we have to say at least, this can't be talking about ancient Egypt. It must be talking about some kind of future Egypt, which makes us say this is a spiritual Egypt. So if it's a future Egypt, it has to be a spiritual Egypt. I will not suffer them, meaning the Lord's people, now to dwell in the land of Egypt, but I will bring them with a mighty hand and a stretched out arm, and smite Egypt with plagues as before, and will destroy all the land thereof. So that's the clue right there. It says, 1, I will bring them with a mighty hand, and we already know that we're going to be delivered out of Babylon the Great. 2, at the end, it says, and will destroy all the land thereof. The Bible prophesies that this land, America, is going to be completely destroyed. All you have to do is read certain chapters like Jeremiah 50, Jeremiah 51, obviously Revelation the 18th chapter. This entire land of America is going to be completely destroyed. So this Egypt right here, or spiritual Egypt, is also referring to America. You have many names, code names as we like to say, for America. Babylon the Great and Egypt are the big two, but you also have Nineveh, you have Assyria, you have Sodom, and you have a few others. So this is talking about a future prophecy referring to America that's being called Egypt right here. Why? Because we're still in captivity. Just like how we were in captivity under the ancient Egyptian Empire, we're currently under captivity under new Pharaoh, which are these Edomites, in this new spiritual Egypt, which is America. Now that we've got that, now that we've understood that, rather, the point here is that the Most High said he will smite Egypt with plagues as before. He will smite Egypt with plagues as before. So that's why this article is titled West Seeing Biblical Explosions of Mormon Crickets and Grasshoppers. Pretty sure I wanted to read verse 12. It says, Egypt shall mourn, and the foundation of it shall be smitten with the plague and punishment that God shall bring upon it. They that till the ground, oh man, it's crazy, and we're talking about grasshoppers. It could have been any plague. That's funny. They that till the ground shall mourn, these farmers, for their seeds shall fail through the blasting of hail and with a fearful consolation. And it goes on to continue speaking of this end time prophecy. Woe to the world and them that dwell therein. Right? So we already know that there's going to be a famine. As a matter of fact, when you read up, I'm going to get right to the point. 2 Judges 15, I'll read verses 4 and 5. For all the unfaithful shall die in their unfaithfulness. Behold, saith the Lord, I will bring, future tense. This is the prophecy. I will bring plagues upon the world. We just read one. Sword, that's a plague. Famine, that's a plague, and that's the point. Death and destruction. So famine is coming to this place. Not going to make this a super long video, but I wanted to bring out those quick precepts, just showing that we're still living right now in the land of our captivity. America is known as spiritual Egypt, amongst other names in the Bible. And right now, the West Coast is seeing biblical, as they say, explosions of Mormon crickets and grasshoppers. This is all relevant because the Most High is working a famine right now, in which these grasshoppers and crickets are helping to, I'll use the word, expedite that prophecy. So our job as the hopeful elect is to continue to see these things, understand what time that we're living in right now, and continue to pray that the Lord builds up our spirits, strengthens our mind, and increases our faith for this upcoming time of Jacob's trouble that is upon us. So I pray that this was edifying to the elect. Call Haloyim, Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahushai, Ba'ashem Chakudash, double honors to our apostles and elders of Great Millstone. Peace and blessings to the elect. Shalom.